1, 2, 3.
Welcome to another episode of the Smartest Amazon Seller Podcast. I am your host, Scott Needham, and I like to talk about a lot of things Amazon, but today is a different kind of subject because I got a guest. I have James Thompson here from Prosper itself. So James, welcome.
Thanks for having me on today, Scott.
Well, a few more things about James is I think he probably has been around the Amazon game longer than anyone else you know. Before he was involved in Prosper, he has, as I understand, ran his own agency. But before then, he worked for Amazon as an account manager for sellers. Is that right?
Yes, many years ago, back starting in 2007, I started working at Amazon, had the opportunity to be Amazon's first FBA account manager, and then went on to run Amazon Services, which is the group that is responsible for recruiting almost all the third-party sellers to the platform. So most of your listeners today who are listening in, if they have at some point signed up and run a third-party business, they almost certainly came through the platform that I used to run. So welcome, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah. No, that's, what a life that the FBA program has had and much of sellers. And it changes so much year to year. I think 2019 had a lot of changes and dramatic events of its own. But I brought James on because I wanted to talk more about Prosper. So this is a Amazon specific conference that's been around for about 5 years. James has started it. And for me, it's been like just a no-brainer to go to. There's, as I'll go into what I like, but first I want to ask James, what sets apart Prosper from the other conferences out there?
Well, taking the Amazon way of building new products, my business partner, Joe Hansen, he and I had been to a number of other conferences, and the one piece that we thought was missing from most of them was hard-hitting content, helping sellers to actually understand what's going on, helping sellers to get perspectives that weren't necessarily a sponsor standing on stage saying, hey, here's a problem. By the way, the only way to solve it is to use my solution. I don't believe in those approaches. I believe in trying to remove as much bias as possible and getting different perspectives and helping sellers on Amazon get a much better perspective of what's going on. So not that we're trying to compare ourselves to other shows, but when Joe and I 5 years ago decided that we were crazy enough to start a conference of our own, we said, okay, what kind of show would we want to go to? What are all the things that we would want at a show that would make it interesting to us as people participating in the Amazon space? And what would we want to see? What would we not want to see? And then we worked out, okay, how do we actually make the economics of this work? And what's pretty ridiculous is I don't know how to run a show. 5 years ago, when we decided we were going to do this, it was literally as simple as, okay, if we're going to run a show, we're going to need a hotel. Okay, we're going to need a conference room. Okay, we're going to need someone to pay some of the bills. So we're going to need a trade show floor, and I'm going to need to talk to some of those companies I know who like to get in front of Amazon sellers, and working out some of these basic things. And we got into crazy stuff like, okay, are we serving chicken or are we serving beef? Well, I can assure you at no point in my life prior to this did I say, I want to get into details like this. And yet putting on a good show and feeding people well and making sure it's all timed out properly, that's all part of putting a show together. So,
and the bigger a group gets, the more complicated the small things get. Just like food, then at a certain scale, then you have to have a vegetarian option and a kosher option. And
yeah, our first year, we didn't know how well things were going to go. And the crazy thing is the bottleneck that stopped us from selling more tickets. We actually ran out of kosher catering capacity.
Oh, wow.
So we were about a week before the show, and we had maxed out what we could get locally made for kosher meals. As it turned out, we had 700 plus people at our first show, which is pretty amazing and extremely humbling. And things have only grown from there. And so now we're up to just under 2,000 people. We're no longer in Salt Lake City, where our first event was. We're in Las Vegas.
Well,
Las Vegas is a great place to do a show.
Yeah.
People like going to Vegas.
No, Vegas is the best spot. I actually was partial to Salt Lake because I lived 5 miles away from the show. It was funny to go to a show that I would travel for, but really all I did is just drive down the street. And I know some things that happened at that very first show that like still impact my business today. So all along the way, like Prosper has been a big part of me learning about Amazon. And I think you said a lot of things that were very interesting there. And I agree with some of the differentiators you said. Specifically, like there are other Amazon focused conferences, but they kind of, if I'm going to be honest, some of them have a feel that like they're kind of guiding them into their path of doing Amazon. And they're kind of like hand holding. They can feel very beginner focused. They're saying like, hey, you want to sell on Amazon? Here's our proven method. And kind of they can feel like a sales funnel to a degree. Mm-hmm. So,
there's no silver bullet selling on Amazon. And
right.
If I'm going to be very personal about this, when I left Amazon, one of my biggest frustrations when I worked at Amazon is how little education Amazon puts out to sellers. And sellers basically have to figure stuff out themselves. In the last year of my role at Amazon, I watched literally tens of thousands of sellers blow up because they shouldn't have been sellers in the first place. And when you think of the human consequences of people deciding, hey, I want to start a business, I'm going to take my hard-earned savings, I'm going to go and start, finding the right kind of products to sell. Well, if you don't understand how to play the game properly on Amazon, if you don't understand what pressures you're going to have to deal with, while the marketplace may be large and there may be lots of opportunity to make money, that doesn't make it easy. And so I want to make sure that the people who, our target audience are folks who have already launched on Amazon, who already have at least a few years under their belt, but it's still really hard to make money. It's really hard to get current information and stay up to speed on what the latest developments are at Amazon.
Oh, for sure.
Prosper's meant to be that place where you go and say, listen, not only are we going to learn from lots of different folks who are living in this space every single day, but we're going to get different perspectives and we're going to try to strip away as much of the bias as possible, because the reality is everybody has something to sell. But let's put that aside for now and try to understand what's actually going on within this Amazon environment. Let's try to figure out, what does this mean for each of us? Yes, if some of you want to use a solution provider, we have a trade show floor full of folks that you can go talk to. But at the end of the day, it's not about, hey, I want to sell you a whole bunch of stuff that hopefully will help to solve some of your problems. Rather, the focus is spend 2 days, spend 3 days, come to Vegas, and think of that as an investment in your business to try to understand more of the big pains and challenges that you're having. Not only can you learn from speakers, but there's 1,500 other top 1% Amazon sellers at the event. Yep. You literally turn to your left, you turn to your right. These are all multi-million-dollar sellers. Yep. So if you're saying, gosh, I don't know how this new Amazon program works, I want to talk to 4 or 5 other people, you can literally sit down and have lunch at a table with a bunch of other sellers who are going through the exact same problems. And so as I think about the networking potential for a prospective attendee, it's incredible. And yes, you're going to come to the show and you'll pick up some learnings, some things that will help you. But if you can meet 4 or 5 people at the event, other sellers that are in the same situation as you, those 4 or 5 sellers, the opportunity to talk with them at the show and beyond the show, that's worth its weight in gold. And so,
for sure,
as I think about the things that we've done at our show to evolve it over the past 4 or 5 years, we put more and more focus on the networking potential, getting people to connect with each other so they can help each other beyond the show. Yes, we still want top-notch educational content, but people need to also meet one another and learn from one another, because the reality is, even though we may all be competitors at some level, we're all in this together trying to figure out, how do we keep afloat and how do we leverage this channel to make profitable businesses happen.
Yep. I can attest to several things that you said. Specifically, I think last year there was a unique networking app that you had that allowed people to create some meeting times if they wanted to talk about a certain subject. It was actually really clever, the setup of this app. What was that app called?
Brella.
Oh yes, that's right, Brella. Sorry to throw you on the spot right there. Yeah, I remember it was all about like you can say what you are interested in learning and what you have expertise in, and so kind of like of what you need and what other people have. It just had this like matchmaking component to it, and a kind of an easy way to set up impromptu meetings at a conference. That was really unique. And then, I mean, that is a manufactured networking that's like effective, but
Yes.
but at the same time, you sit at a table to eat lunch, and the people that are sitting next to you are. It's very easy to hit a conversation with someone because we're all Amazon sellers, and maybe slightly different in the types of products that we sell, but very similar in our experiences. You know, everyone's run against, you know, Amazon's policies at one point. I just don't know of any seller that hasn't had to be aware of like what you can't do. And so everyone's had a different perspective of approaching